There is a nexus between democracy, economic prosperity, and stability. Two scholars, Professor James Robinson and Professor Darren Acemoglu, buttressed this in their epic book, Why Nations Fail. Just for emphasis, democracy, according to Britannica, is derived from the Greek word demokratia, which was coined from demos, which means people, and kratos, which means rule. Currently, the United States of America, United Kingdom, Canada, and India are examples of enduring democracies that have attained a level of developed and emerging economies. Nigeria, Africa's most densely populated nation, this year is marking 22 years of an uninterrupted democratic dispensation, which is unprecedented in history, considering 3 botched republics since its independence in 1960. Since 1999, what then has been the major gains for Nigeria's return to democratic rule from a social, economic, and social-political standpoint?
The fact that you and I can sit down here and talk, it's a gain of our democracy. I remember when it was a taboo to even criticize government, and then people that will have to do it, will have to do it clandestinely. I remember the Radio Kudirats of this world, and all of those. But today, we can sit down, we can talk. I wouldn't want to, because I don't believe in all those presidents bringing GSM and saying, "Oh yes, that's dividends of democracy." Anybody could have as well, done that. Any president could have done that. But it's, for me, like they say, freedom. The fact that we can sit down, we can talk. But whether we have used that platform consistently to talk to ourselves and hear ourselves talk is another thing altogether. And then the fact that we participate in electing, good or bad, those that will, determine the affairs of the country, and also in some cases, knowing fully well that the people have the power to remove either a governor, a lawmaker, or a president. It's also one of the gains. People now gradually, we're not there, we're still very far down the ladder, but people now see the fact that yes, the power rests in you. You can either vote, elect not to vote, abstain, but that if we make efforts, we can actually determine who governs us, the power residing with the people. By and large, for me, those are the 2 major planks, for our democratic experiment. We'll have a lot. How well these 2, like I said, had fared, it's a different ball game altogether. But for those, I see the freedom, one, and then the opportunity to actually determine, who governs us. And then also, I would also not forget the enthronement to a very large extent, the rule of law. Even though you hear politicians tout it, we disobey law with impunity, but we've seen to also the enforcement of rules, the enthronement of rule of law, but even though we still have this military-style mentality. But otherwise, before there were people who, state actors who you dare not go to court against with. Even when you go, they won't even obey. So these are some of the benefits, and this also now helps, to open up the economy, the fuller participation, more participation, and then trust, of both those within and without. I remember during Obasanjo's tenure, a lot of Nigerian diasporas returned home. That yes, now that Nigeria has embraced democracy, there's that trust, there's that freedom, and so there'll be opportunity to grow.
Well, I'll say that in 20 years, one thing that Nigeria has gained from being a civil and democratic rule is that we've started a learning process. The last 20 years has been a learning process, and I think perhaps it's too early, maybe, perhaps, and I use that very carefully, it's too early to start talking about the dividends of democracy, because the democracy that the country got in 1999 was the one that was delivered and packaged by the military, as it were. So a couple of things were not really in order, in a manner of speaking. So we're going through what you call the democratic training process right now, 20 years on, rather than saying we are a full-fledged democracy. It's taking hundreds of years for the United States. It's taking it's taking Europe so long in history, from the Roman, the Greece Empire, and all of that, to get to the kind of democratic norms and practices and deliverables that we have today. So sometimes some folks might argue that, say, well, maybe it's too early for us to say 20 years, we've gotten everything right, everybody's behaving and everything is fine. We have a constitution that still needs a whole lot of reworking. We need to take it back to the workshop and re-knock it all over again. We need to break it all down and put it back together. Who are those who are going to make this constitution work? What are the frameworks of public service and civil service that will have to be in a democratic sense? The role of the military, the role of the security agencies, the role of the executive branch, the judiciary, and the legislative arm all have to be redefined within the context of the rule of law and the rule of governance or democracy for the people, by the people, and for the benefit of the people. We didn't have that. So what we had in 1999 was something that was packaged for democracy to come into existence. So it's like giving birth to a child. The parents will have to prepare for parenthood. It's different from being a wife and a husband. Now they have to prepare for a family. Once a kid is born, you now have to have sleepless nights. You have to train the child morally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, financially, economically. So it's a whole lot of work. So democracy is like giving birth. You now need to nurture that baby called democracy to be able to become a responsible citizen that you're trying to grow up a child. So 20 years, on the democratic front, we're trying to test the pillars of democracy, as it were. And that period of testing is still going on. It's still fine-tuning. We haven't gotten it right yet, in every manner of speaking. One thing that had happened, however, was that we've been able to keep the military at bay. So we haven't seen the military incursion in 20 straight years. And that is one good thing that we've been able to do, despite the downsides and the fault lines that the democratic pillars of the country have had, both at federal, state, local government, whatever levels. We've been able to keep this going as go to the polls every 4 years, we elect a new president or get the incumbent re-elected. That process of electoral processes has been well done in the last 20 years. And I'm not talking about whether there were voters fraud or vote fraud, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. But the fact that we have this process in which democracy keeps renewing itself, that is a process that has been of benefit. But when you go to coming to the point of financial services, that is a different ball game entirely, because the financial services industry prior to 1999 is on its own kind of trajectory, as it were. You can have a change of who is the head of the SEC or the head of the central bank. The finance minister comes and goes with every administration, as we all know. But the financial services industry got a very good start with the Obasanjo's administration in 1999. During the first 8 years in office, by the way, with the Paris Club issue being handled, the strengthening of the debt management office, the independence that the Central Bank of Nigeria has gotten, the way things move at the Securities and Exchange Commission, the change of leadership at the SEC, at the stock exchange, and all of you, the pension industry, the banking industry, the microfinance, and other financial services. And it's all worked out to the extent that Nigeria became the focus for international investors, both foreign direct investors and foreign portfolio investors. And we saw these huge inflows in those years in which everybody was looking at Nigeria as a country having a rebirth. So, and then we had a bit of privatization moves by the Obasanjo's administration, if you all remember very well. And that was with the NITEL, even though it was eventually botched, and we moved on to issue new licenses to MTN, Econet, Wireless, and the rest of them to start them, which is now Airtel Africa. So there was a whole lot of optimism with the privatization. I remember those road shows we were having with the stock exchange across Europe, across cities in the United States and elsewhere. And it was all about this optimism that with the Debt Management Office, with the a BPE, which also came into existence and became a very strong with the DMO and the rest, the government today can look back and sit back and say, look, we're approaching international markets. The banks in Nigeria today can approach international market. We have international status for a number of our banks. And that was all because the democratic practices, the fact that we're under democracy, makes our banks, our financial system, a lot more in tune with the global best practices. We went through the the Financial Intelligence Unit issue. We got our name removed from the nations that are under financial watch for money laundering and what have you. And quite a whole lot had been done, by the way, and I think I must give credit to those who are involved.
While there have been appreciable gains of democracy in Nigeria for over 2 decades, there are several groups that believe that it has been a tale of pains for the nation.
I understand pinpoint to mean an area of weakness, and if that is what is intended, then I think that a lack of leadership is a great misfortune that has befallen Nigeria, that we seem to be a nation adrift. And when that happens, then all kinds of people step into the space. And that's why we are contending on all these fronts, on so many fronts, farmer, herders, clashes, all kinds. The nation is just running amok. And I think it's because of lack of clear, decisive, visionary leadership.
The economy hasn't done too well since 1999. I recall that way back then, even though in 1999 crude oil prices were down and all of that, but in time, the Nigerian economy picked up, and there were times when the economy grew at 7%, 8%, 6%, and so on. But look where we are today. For a while now, it's been tales of woe, and that's even before COVID. But the economy hasn't done well. Inflation stands at 18% today, which is one of the highest in the last 20 years. Even though inflation was up in 2006, but in that same year, growth was as high as 8 to 9%. Today, we're battling stagflation, so it hasn't been a bed of roses. Regarding regulation, I think that the regulators, as well as the regulatees, the operators in Nigeria, don't quite understand the whole essence of regulation. Regulation is good where it facilitates business and allows people to be able to work and to grow and to scale in a structured environment where standards are established. Regulation establishes standards and also ensures that everybody keeps to the rules so that your market is fairly assured. It's perhaps the best you can do rather than to ban stuff and to use brute force to prevent people from doing business. So regulation hasn't done too well, but I believe that regulation can still learn a lot more in Nigeria. Other aspects of the economy, monetary policy has probably been overused in Nigeria. It seems easy to wheel out because all you have to do is make a pronouncement on interest rates, on cash reserve ratio, even to the level of foreign exchange, which is also part of monetary policy. Many times we have overused it, whereas fiscal policy has always lagged behind. So today, Naira has moved from 1999, when it probably was something in the region of 60 Naira to $1. Today, we're talking about almost 500 Naira to $1 on the streets. And of course, we kept all that adjustments going to respond to economic stimulus, to try and balance out the economy, to try and slow down the economy, to slow down importation and all of that. And of course, people still believe in the liberal world that the Naira hasn't found its value. However, I think that monetary policy has kind of been overused in Nigeria, and we probably have fired all our bullets, if you ask me. But what about the fiscal policy? The fiscal policy, we haven't seen the kind of fiscal adjustments that we should have seen since 1999. Fiscal policy is still very much tilted to making those who are in government, politicians and appointees, making them very comfortable, which is a sad story. And that's the reason why we're here today. 2021 budget, 13.5 trillion, about 5.4 trillion will be used to pay wages alone, and about 7 trillion has to be borrowed from abroad, either by borrowing or by grants. Meaning that, of course, the best we can do is raise about 6 or 7 trillion as revenue for ourselves. We haven't done well fiscal wise. However, again, all of this, our work is cut out for us in this country for whoever wishes to, address their minds to some of these challenges. I believe that the challenges are much, but they are not unsurmountable.
Now, beyond the pains and gains of democracy, Nigeria, according to leaders of thought and elder statesmen, have said that it is a crossroad and a state of emergency that needs urgent redemption.
Yes, like you said, 20 years has been quite a while, and a lot of us are extremely frustrated. Those before us and probably those that are coming immediately after. And you seem to wonder, what is it that's made it so impossible for us to make the kind of progress that we need? And things of this nature, there's always an antecedent to these things which pile up and end up in this current frustration. And in as much as it is taking many, many years for us to get to where we are, which as dissatisfied as we feel is our reality, the fact is going to take many, many more years to get out of this bind. My fundamental issue is, and I've said it several times, you really need to have a national value proposition. What does the country stand for? What is it that we wake up in the morning, we're all pursuing every day? That it is who we want to be, how we want to be seen, how we want to be perceived, what we want to achieve. And for as long as there's an absence of that, which is really the role of leadership, because I always say Nigeria is a relatively easy country to lead. Nigerians are so eager to follow, they just haven't found the right person to follow. And when each time we think we found the right person, we find out that the fundamentals of that individual is just not really the kind of leadership we're looking for. We're looking for visionary leadership. We need it desperately. Sometimes some leaders set the pace and the tone, others follow and maintain it. We haven't found one to create that tone. Maybe for me personally, maybe an Awolowo did that, but nobody else has been able to follow up and maintain and drive it. So we need an anchor. And unfortunately for us, we tend to follow a lot of traditional anchors. By anchor, that is, what is it that we hook ourselves onto and drives everything else that we do. And I've thought a lot about it, and it's almost like a paradigm shift for me in saying that I believe that the anchor that we need is education and training. We need to find a way whereby we can. It's almost like saying that the vision or mission of Nigeria should be that not we want to be the greatest oil-producing country or want to be the greatest agricultural country or greatest manufacturing country. We just want to be the country that's got the best quality of people, a country with an extremely trained workforce, an extremely educated workforce, an extremely enlightened workforce, an extremely intelligent population, whereby when you have that in place, everything else falls in place, because when you're talking about very smart people, then they do smart things. So with that, the one thing that we really need to focus on is how can we build smart people? How can we encourage people to be smart? Okay, we've got it wrong. So moving forward, let's not talk about the past. Moving forward, what do we need to do? And I think the lessons that I've learned also has been in the last 10 years or so with our digital economy, especially also with the telecoms, whereby I used to think that when the whole concept of SMS was started, they said that the people would be too illiterate to be able to use SMS. And yet, when they found out that it was a cheaper way of communicating than using the phone itself, everybody picked up the SMS. Today, we say that the whole digital social media and using internet and digital services is something that is very sophisticated. And yet you look around you, everybody from the lowest level possible, for as long as they can lay their hands on a device, they jump onto it, and they're moving very rapidly in its utilization. So I'm saying that really, how can we embark on a massive educational program for our population? It's a paradigm shift. So if we decide that we will be spending the greatest amount of our budget on educating our people, then that's a step forward. Now, educating our people and doing it in a digital manner is the next step. And if you're going to do it digitally, it means that we are going to be investing a massive amount of money in building digital infrastructure. It's almost like saying that everybody has a right to digital access. Now imagine a situation where we say that in this country, that is it. Everybody must have a right to digital access. That is almost like saying you have a right to oxygen. Now, once you do that, you are unleashing such a powerful mechanism for making the economy to grow. It means that everything we do must support education. So if education becomes the anchor, it means that industrialization, if you want to build a manufacturing organization, then please build it in the area that is going to help us to drive our education.
The socio-economic indicators are alarming at the moment, from high unemployment, high inflation, an escalated level of tension and insecurity, slow GDP growth, decay in the education and health sector, and level of infrastructure and high poverty rates have created uncertainties.
The 22 years of democracy in Nigeria has brought mixed feelings or mixed blessings to the Nigerian private sector and the investing community. The past 1 year, for instance, has been characterized by a lot of uncertainties, largely triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected quite a number of key variables in the Nigerian economy. The macroeconomic environment has not been too favorable for investments. We have seen in the last couple of years a very serious liquidity crisis in the foreign exchange market, where many investors could not access foreign exchange for their critical inputs for production, for their equipment, for their services, and so on and so forth. The economy has also witnessed a very sharp depreciation in its currency, which triggered very severe inflationary pressure. As we speak, headline inflation has risen to above 18%. Food inflation has risen above 20%. The GDP growth remains very fragile. The economy just managed to get out of recession a few months ago. And it is not clear whether we will be able to sustain our exit from recession, having regard to all the challenges of productivity and security that the economy has been facing. The security challenge in the last couple of years have deteriorated significantly. It's beginning to take a toll on investors' confidence, creating a whole lot of uncertainty and affecting the general risk perception of investments in the Nigerian economy. The agricultural sector has been impacted very adversely because the security problem and all the bandits and criminals and terrorists have been attacking many of the agricultural communities across the country, which is affecting productivity in the agricultural sector. And that has had a knock-on effect on food prices, and of course with implications for purchasing power and poverty and misery of the people. The structural challenges still remains. The challenge of logistics, ranging from the issues of cargo clearance at the ports, the issues of movement of goods around the country by road, the slow development and growth of the rail system. All of this combine to make logistics a major challenge for operators in the economy. We must acknowledge what the central bank has done in terms of development finance and all of that. But it's very clear to us that unless we get the business environment right, unless the investment climate gets better, there's very little that the financing component of the solution can do. So we need to fix the structural problems. We have ratified the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which has opened new opportunities for the Nigerian economy on the continent. But unless we are competitive in our production, competitive in our pricing, competitive in our quality, we may not be able to take advantage of the opportunities in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. The challenges that existed before the ratification of the agreement, the fears that were expressed by the manufacturers, which led to the delay in the ratification of the agreement, those fears and those challenges still remain as we speak. The situation has not changed. So we have a great deal of work to do to ensure that we position this economy to be able to benefit and take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Unless this happens, Nigeria will become more of a market destination for other countries than an investment destination. And that would be very unfortunate. So generally, the security situation is one very big challenge that we think the government needs to quickly address. The government doesn't seem to be on top of the situation, and this is a major concern for investors across all levels of investment. So we hope that government will do something quickly about this. We need to fix our foreign exchange environment to inspire more confidence for investors, domestically and internationally. We need to address our structural problems. We need to fix the challenges of policies around the oil and gas sector. We need to fast-track the petroleum industry bill, the passage of the bill. We need to deregulate the downstream oil sector. All of these are very important reforms that are needed to ensure that we get this economy to progress, to accelerate better than what it is now.
Amidst all the storms facing Nigeria, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this hinges on the nation's addressing critical socioeconomic issues in the nation.
It's 22 years into democracy during this Fourth Republic. You have such stridency of citizens' voice saying that they are not comfortable with the 1999 Constitution. That means that it's a moment for our political class to stop everything that they are doing and think. They should know that this is a moment that presents an opportunity for the kind of conversation that citizens are saying they are ready for, without immediately thinking that, they should manipulate the citizens into shutting them down. No, don't shut the citizens down. It is a time of maturity. Citizens are showing that maturity, but their political leaders are not showing it. That's the painful thing that's going on. So first step is for our political authorities, political leaders to mature and meet the citizens at this level of maturity that they are showing. They are demonstrating that this is a country that they have, that has suffered, in external leadership in determining its formation. It's a country that then fell into militarization, and finally it's been able to find its way through to the civilian rule that has not been aborted for this length of time. The previous times were just 5.5 years on the average. The other cycles of democracy, that's the first two, the 1960 to when the first coup happened in 66, then the period of 1979 to 83. If the average of those would give you, of those two would give you about 5.5 years compared to 22 years that we see with this. Of course, the Third Republic hardly happened. So here we are in a state where we need political leadership, and it is absent. It is absent, and that's what's dangerous about this moment. So it's a moment that presents humongous opportunity to now bring everyone together and to design a process where we can truly talk. This is an opportunity for proper family talk. The kind of family talk where voices are raised and people are staging, saying they are walking out of the meeting, and others are saying, don't walk out, we have to just do this conversation, no matter how painful it is. And after we've done this conversation, we will figure out whether we still think that anything is deep enough to separate us. Is it not possible that the things that anger us are things that we can negotiate and find common grounds for? The families that give themselves opportunity to hold candid talks end up being very strong families. So it's either that, or we find ourselves in a situation where we have clueless political leaders, selfish political leaders, who are watching the country, on the precipice and not caring and pretending to be leaders of a non-existent, family of people right now. And that's what, for me is troubling. But I believe that ultimately citizens of this country are not going to allow the ruination of the country. That it is out of the citizens that we will emerge a system of conversation around who we are, who we could be, and what it would take for us to become that.
My own position is that if we can go back and focus on education as the anchor for everything else we're going to do, most people who want to think of at a very sophisticated level will say, what's that going to do for us? But just imagine that if over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we are pumping serious money into education in all its ramifications based on the way I just explained it, you'll be amazed at what it's going to do to the whole economy itself. A lot of times we say nowadays that 60, 70% of the population is below the age of 25 or whatever it is. What we're really saying is that another 10 years from now, a huge, probably 50% of the population is in the working age, the age of employment. So what do we do? Because we are probably saying that they're young, youthful population. That young population is going to become a working population and work to do what? Where are the jobs? And yet you find out that, again, I believe that education, training, development, competence building, all those things that allow us to create a sophisticated environment will allow the environment itself to propel itself and become the way to go. Now, there's certain impediments also, and that is if you don't have leaders that are technically savvy, leaders who you don't even have to be technically savvy, you just have to have that vision and say, let those who know how to do this, let them do it. But we will support and make sure that these things happen. And I think these are the things that we've got to consider.
According to Professor Darren Acemoglu, the political economist, democracy is still the best form of social political system despite the attacks it has experienced.
And why does democracy bring this growth? It's actually important to understand that. There are a couple of things. The first is that democracy brings productivity improvements. And it does so because it's actually better at getting rid of the worst regulations, those that create oligarchies and monopolies and corruption, than dictatorships. Second, democracy does one thing that its opponents really don't like. It raises taxes. Tax revenue, and I will come back to this. Tax revenue is a lifeblood for developing countries. Developing countries need infrastructure. They need education. They need health. Those are not cheap. But if the government doesn't have legitimacy, if it doesn't want to tax its cronies, and if it cannot overcome informality and illegality, that it cannot raise taxes, it will not have the revenues to do that. You need a social pact to increase taxes. And those taxes are then going to be the lifeblood for future growth. And in fact, what democracies do typically, there are exceptions, but typically what they do is that they raise taxes and they invest those things in education and health. And you see what happens to infant mortality after democracy. It's like a huge-scale health program. It's like an amazing decline in health, infant mortality after democracy. Why? Because once you democratize, you start spending on health services in parts of the countries that were completely ignored by non-democratic regimes. So much of a good thing. Why aren't we all democratic? Why aren't we embracing it around the world? Well, many reasons. First of all, not everybody loves democracy. If you are the Chinese Communist Party or a military dictator in Africa or Latin America, you don't love democracy. Democracy means your privileges are taken away from you. If you're a crony of one of such person, you also don't like it.
His colleague, Professor James Robinson, wraps it up in this manner.
Inclusive economic institutions are very crucial for prosperity, but the type of economic institutions a society has come from the political system, come from the nature of political institutions. So to build inclusive economic institutions, you've got to build inclusive political institutions, and that's the big challenge. And how do you do that? Where do inclusive political institutions come from? Well, typically not from enlightened political leaders. It's a political project, but it's society that has to build coalitions to generate inclusive political institutions.
Nigeria has a great opportunity to make its democratic journey work for the populace. It will require robust constitutional review, inclusive institutions, value for the rule of law, fiscal restructuring, and a fair competitive economy, regulators that serve as enablers, not disablers, investments in health and education, and a completely reformed electoral process. In the words of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, I see hope for Nigeria. That same hope that kept the annulled June 12, 1993 election fire till the actualization of the Fourth Republic should continue to inspire every Nigerian, from the leaders to citizens, to work together to make democracy a vehicle for the socio-economic transformation of the nation. Nigeria will flourish again.